Good morning and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, back to another daily reviews. So, today we're going to be looking at R-Type on Evercade. None of your pussy home console versions. This is not easy mode, this is definitely hard mode. R-Type on the coin-operated arcade from the 1990s. So, a little bit of background. I used to go bowling on a Saturday with my dad. Shout out to old man, shout out to Pops for being awesome when I was young. And after we'd finished doing a few frames of bowling, he used to give me like 7-8 quid in change, and I used to go and pump this straight into the arcade machines. Lightning swords did get a bit of a look in when it was working, but usually it wasn't working, so the next best thing was R-Type Arcade, and that's the game we're going to play today. R-Type is a horizontally scrolling shooty bang bang game for 2 sequential players. You move to the right, you shoot things, you try and avoid bullets, you try and get as far as you can without dying. So that's what we're going to try and do right now. So as you can see, there's no background music. This is an arcade game. It expects that the arcade cabinet is going to have its own radio playing. That's why it has no music. So you press select, whack a fake coin in there, and off we go. Now, as I was saying earlier, this is an extremely difficult and frustrating game to play, and that's the reason why you can prove your superiority as a young teenage boy if you are good at this game. The women will love you, the men will want to be you, life will be amazing if you're good at this game. That little nugget of wisdom is, of course, 100% absolutely true. There is no woman on earth that can refuse or resist a man who is good at the original R-Type coin-op arcade. Remember that, son, it will be useful to you to know. If you're still a virgin or you are particularly unlucky with the ladies, all you've got to do is get yourself a copy of this game, sit her down in front of it for a couple of hours, 3, 4 or maybe 7 hours, show her that you can get to the end in a single life, and her knickers will come off like that. Obviously this is not true, please don't really do that, I am joking. No, what will actually impress the ladies, or the men, if you want to impress the men, because it's 2024, current year argument, if you want to impress the men or the Pikachus, then what you will need to do is get yourself on social media, whinge about Palestine or women's rights, or pick up some fantasy political point that you don't really care about, that you can make a lot of noise about, scream your head off about that, make loads of posts, loads of fuss, make sure everybody sees your brightly coloured hair and hears your voice, and you will be in with a chance. Daily, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, now that I've taught you about the birds and the bees of the current year, perhaps we can get back to reviewing this game. So as you can see, for 1987 it has pretty average graphics, even for that time, but I think there's a charm, there's a nostalgic charm to these kind of graphics, and there's no slowdown, there's tons of sprites on screen at the same time, really colourful graphics, and I like the fact that it's a fast-paced game, and it relies on skill and slyness of movement in order to win the day. So don't hit into any scenery, don't hit into any bullets, make sure you pick up the pickups and you will be just fine. So we are approaching the first boss now, and as you see, I am flipping good at this game. I've managed to not die, so that means I have fully powered up my weapons. I have 1 satellite and I have a fully powered up force ball, and I think we'll make short work of this thing. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Mother Brain from Metroid. I think Metroid was 89, wasn't it? So actually Metroid ripped this off, it wasn't the other way around. Anyway, that was easy, so let's get past this onto the next stage. And what you'll find is each stage's got its own kind of theme, its own setup and graphical style. That was robotics, that was like what people used to think the robots of the future would look like. They didn't look anything like that. I mean, they're basically bits of flat glass, that's what robotics did look like. Everything looks really boring now. In the 90s we thought that the future of robotics and artificial intelligence was going to look absolutely amazing, and what we actually got was slightly less impressive. So onto the second stage, where everything looks like intestinal bacteria or some kind of internal parasites, which I really like. The kind of bugs and bacterial look to everything is kind of creepy and just gives you a little bit more atmosphere as you're blasting the shit out of everything that moves. But you can see by now what kind of game you're dealing with here. So it's a reflex shooter really, more than a side-scrolling shooter. If you don't move quick enough, you will die. If you're not observant and you don't keep an eye on all the random bullets and things flying about the screen, you will die. If you hit into the scenery because you're too intent on looking at the stuff that's moving, you will die. And if you forget to pick up all the weapon upgrades and the pickups, then you will die. So it's fairly hazardous to your health just playing this game in general. But that's the charm of this game. It is not easy mode, as we see there, because I just died. but I feel like that was an honourable death. I mean, look how far I got on Single Life. Come on guys, even though I'm not going to get laid for it, you're impressed, aren't you? You know, other teenage boys at the time would have looked at that and gone, that guy's special, he's got something amazing about him. Because he can get so far on a Single Life, I'm going to want to be his friend. Look, it was the 90s, it was a simpler time, okay? You didn't have to do that much impressing to be friends with other people. It wasn't like now. It wasn't like now where people are more interested in ticking you off the list for something you've done, rather than looking for some little thing that you've done well in order to be your friend. No, today it's like, what have you done badly? What reasons can I choose to kick you out of my possible friends list, or shun you for some stupid little thing that you did or said? You know, perhaps you're a racist or a sexist or an Islamophobe, or perhaps you're just not equal to my political knowledge, or you don't support the same things that I do. Maybe you have a different football team to me. I feel like today's society is extremely discriminatory. Extremely discriminatory, which in a way it never used to be. Back in the 90s when everything went, but there was barely any arguments. It was like free speech central. Everything was so much better, and that is why I chose to show you this game today. This is exactly what the 90s was about. Simple, addicting fun. Yes, it was expensive, but you had money because the economy wasn't down the toilet as it currently is today. In addition to that, you had a console at home, so you were in practice, you weren't out of practice, you were playing loads of games at home, but it didn't impact your social life because people had two-player games, and a two-player game meant two people sat in front of one TV. In fact, that's another interesting observation that I have just made. How many games that say two-player game or three-player game or four-player game back in the 90s meant, even if you took turns, it was a social event. That's why we loved games more back in the 90s, because you enjoyed it with your friends and you were actually sat in the same room, even if you were taking turns. Whereas these days, a multiplayer game is everybody has to play at once, everybody has to be equally involved, but equally distant. It's like you're all sat on your own, in your rooms, with a headset on, blocking out reality, ignoring the rest of the world, and blasting the hell out of things individually. It just doesn't have the same ring to it to me, so I'm mourning the loss of the 90s, I must say. The 90s was so much better than today's decade. Today's decade kinda sucks. In fact, that's probably why I want everyone to buy an Evercade and buy all these games, because realistically, this is your method to going back to the 90s without being arrested. You don't need to do drugs, you don't need to go into clubs when you're far too old, and you can reminisce and you can enjoy that nostalgia in the same way you used to, without hanging around with people half your age. I feel like we've kind of sidetracked off the game, so let's get back to reviewing the game. So, as I was saying, the graphics are pretty average, but they're still good. The sound is pretty average, but it's still good, but the music's bloody banging. I love the tracks on this game. Even though it's like MIDI, it's not actually recorded instruments, I do think they did a great job on the music. And the general atmosphere of this game really is cool. It's almost like, because it puts you under so much intense pressure to not die, there's a real feeling of accomplishment even to getting this far. This is only the third stage, this isn't even halfway through the game. But look at the difficulty curve. Look at the sheer amount of stuff I'm having to avoid and shoot at, and it's slowly scrolling, and those blaster things are going to go off in a minute and keep me in this little tiny space, and I eventually die. But you know what, I'm pleased with this performance. I can't believe I've even got this far while I've been talking and making this review. And I've even got into the scoreboard, number 4. Just like when I was young. I swear to God, I am cursed with being 3rd or 4th at bloody everything. But it's okay, and it would have been even more okay in the 90s because the people above me would have been there, and I could have watched their little tactics and strats playing the game and picked it up off them. So anyway, I'm done moaning about how crap today is and how much better the 90s was. In terms of this game, you've seen all you need to see, and I think it's time to go to our final conclusion and our fun score for this game. So, after blasting through the first 3 stages of R-Type like an absolute boss and macing it up until I died 3 times in a row on that last level, I think it's pretty clear what I'm going to say for this game in terms of rating. Before we get to that, I just want to recap how much better the 90s were than now. Not so that I can look back and whinge. The reason I bring up the 90s is so we can look forward and try and have some kind of effect on what we're going to be doing in future years. Now, what do I suggest? Well, I think it's time enough that we switched off our computers, stopped looking at our phones and being hypnotised by our TikToks or our ChatGPTs or any of this kind of bollocks, and we started to make an effort to actually connect on a human level. That's what's missing from now that we used to have in the 90s that we don't have today. People were more interested in each other's lives, and that means they were closer as a community, as friends, as families, and things were just generally better. Arguments didn't last as long and weren't as ferocious, and the reason is because you didn't want to piss people off too badly, because you were going to have to spend time with them probably quite soon after. Whereas today you can avoid people completely, still keep in touch with them with your WhatsApp, still keep in touch with them with your Facebook, still keep in touch with them with your smartphone, but completely fucking ignore them and not see them for months on end. So in conclusion, what do I think of R-Type? Obviously it's going to get 1987 out of 2005, which is about 8.7 out of 10 or something like that, so it's obviously a must-buy game. Definitely go and buy this game if you've got an Evercade. It's absolutely amazing and you will love it. But what is more than that, you can invite your friends round and sit them down in front of a TV that you own, and you can both enjoy the game together over a beer or a cup of tea, and you can enjoy each other's company like you used to in the old days, and you can actually remember what it was about other people that made you want to be friends with them in the first place. It wasn't because they had a cool bunch of pictures that were taken with them looking like this and had filtering and cool lighting or anything else. It wasn't because they had 6 million friends and you liked to read their political views every flipping day. No, it was because they were cool and you were cool and you got along and you had something in common. So that's going to be the conclusion of today's video. Buy this game, it's amazing, but don't play it on your own. Get your friends to come round, stick a bunch of beers on or get the kettle on and enjoy things together in person, and stop pretending that you can be friendly and sociable when you're miles away on your separate devices ignoring everything. So in conclusion, 8.5 out of 10 is going to be the fun rating for this game. It is amazing, even though the graphics aren't that great and the sound isn't that great. It's the fun in the game and the environment and the general aesthetic and the pleasing, challenging nature of this game that is great on your own, but even better to share with your friends. And that brings us to the end of our review, both of R-Type and of the current year in comparison to the 90s, which was so much fucking better. So let's try and get back there. And that's the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you really enjoyed going back to the 90s if you so were there in the past, and you enjoy future years by bringing the things that were good about the 90s into the current year and enjoying them now. And it's up to you to do that. No one else is going to do it for you. Us, the Gen X or the Boomers, it's up to us to remind people in today's world what they are missing when they're doing this all bloody day. So anyway, it really is the end of this video now, so I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. I feel like I almost didn't talk about the game there. I got a bit carried away. What an unusual review video. Anyway, that's all for now, so hope you enjoyed that. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. Bye bye.